Are you looking for valuable business advice to reach that 7-figure revenue mark? Do you want actionable tips to properly navigate through every business challenge you encounter along the way? Let Tersh Blissett and Josh Crouch be your guide in getting you to the top here at Service Business Mastery. Tune in as they sit down with world-renowned authors in business, leadership, and personal growth who share valuable insights about management, marketing, pricing, human resources, and so much more. Let their nuggets of wisdom gold guide you in owning a thriving, profitable, and ever-growing business. Here are your hosts, Tersh and Josh.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. I hope you're having a great day. You are listening to or watching live this episode of the Service Business Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Tersh Blissett. I have Erica Leonor on the show today. She is the Master Jedi Trainer at Power Selling Pros. She is a board member of the Women in HVACR, and we're going to talk today about CSRs and dispatchers and how CSRs and dispatchers and office staff in general are a very important cog in the wheel of being productive. And without a very good CSR, flat out, it's as simple as you're going to fail. And personally with us, whenever Julie is working, she's in the military. My wife Julie's in the military, so sometimes she has to go off for 2 weeks. And when that happens, and we don't have a CSR, but back before we had a CSR on staff, then I had to start doing everything. And that's when the pain points really, we could feel them. That's when the balls got dropped a lot. But so I'm super excited to talk today with Erica about Power Selling Pros and just talking about CSRs and their roles in general. But with that being said, welcome to the show, Erica.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. This is my favorite topic. So
awesome. So tell me a little bit, so we talked a little bit offline and beforehand. Whenever someone comes to you and says something like, well, I'm not a service expert, I'm not a service technician or install technician, I'm just this, I'm just that. What's your first reaction on that?
So I hate the phrase, I'm just because we're not just something. It makes us sound like we're pathetic, actually. And I hear this on call recordings all the time when I am training CSRs or dispatchers, and we'll be listening to their phone calls, and they get a technical question. They'll be like, I'm not a technician, I'm just a CSR, or I'm just a dispatcher. And I'm like, are you really though? You're just meaning you're not as good, or you don't play an important part in this company. What does it sound like when we say I'm just and it's really, we're belittling ourselves. And I really like to help them with just building themselves up. I'm like, you know what? I'm actually the queen bee of this office, and I control the schedules of the people you need to talk to. So when are they coming? Just really building up our role instead of making it sound like, I'm not as good because I don't have technical knowledge. Try and have a technician answer the phone, like you said.
Exactly. You just start bumbling over things and wow, this sounded way easier when I was listening to someone over their shoulders saying something.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got hooked up with Power Selling Pros.
Yeah, so it actually is a fun story. I've kind of been a gypsy my whole life. My mom's from Hawaii, my dad is from Utah, and I'm currently living around in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I moved back and forth between both my whole life. So I had the islands, and then I had the mountains. And then when I was in college in Hawaii, I was like, I'm just going to start traveling the world. So I started finding opportunities, in different countries as internships or study abroads, or working as an English teacher or a nanny or whatever it is I needed to find. And I started traveling. So for 8 years of my life, I lived out of 2 suitcases. I traveled to 21 countries.
Wow.
And I lived in half of those, which was really fun. I would stay maybe, 5-6 months in a place. And I really just showed up somewhere and figured it out. Had to learn Mandarin in China. I had to learn I was working in Israel. So I was learning like Arabic and Hebrew, and then
Holy
I'm fluent
cow.
in Spanish. I lived in Mexico. So it was just like, I just,
Wow.
because my degree is in anthropology. So I love cultures. I love people. So it just kind of made sense that I wouldn't get my classroom experience. I'd get real life experience.
That makes total sense. I mean, and no better way of learning a language than just throwing yourself into the middle of it, sink or swim.
I don't remember a thing in Mandarin, but I could still recite the Hebrew alphabet. So that's something for me. But yeah, I spent 8 years doing that, and it was so much fun. I loved it. And then, I don't know, one day I just came back to Utah and I was like, maybe I should be serious about, making money for myself instead of just living, paycheck to paycheck. And so I came back to Utah. I started working at a substance abuse counseling center. So I was teaching a lot of, substance abuse classes or domestic violence, anger management classes, different things like that in Utah. And then my husband and I moved for his job. And so I was looking for a new opportunity. And funny, this is how now Power Selling Pros comes into the picture is my husband is really good. My husband's from the Dominican Republic. And so he's really good friends with an employee at the wife of an employee at Power Selling Pros. So we were just like going over there to visit because they were friends, like for dinner one night, a game night or whatever. And before I know it, her husband is like showing me everything that he does as a customer service coach. Next thing I know, I applied and I started working here. So
that's awesome.
About 4 years now, almost.
Yeah, it's so funny though how the whole anthropology kind of has come full circle. So you studying people, and now you're helping to coach people.
Yeah, it's like I never even knew what HVAC stood for. I did not even know how to work a thermostat or anything like that.
That's very common. That's not uncommon for sure.
Well, when you're traveling all over the place and you're just living in hostels or whatever it is, like you don't have to do anything. And, bless my father's soul, like, and my mom, it was just not something I learned about. Water was just hot. I didn't know really about water heaters or anything, So I definitely had a whole new world, but you're right. It's so cool to be able to apply that, people knowledge, that communication, that cultural knowledge to the industry and specifically in customer service, which is super fun. So
that is really cool. So how does Women in HVACR play a role in that? Because you're a board member there also. Yeah.
So it was a couple years ago where Power Selling Pros, we became a sponsor of Women in HVACR, and we wanted to get involved because we have about 90% of our employees at Power Selling Pros are female. And so, we're just super passionate about women and having jobs and opportunities in the workforce, and especially in an industry where it's predominantly dudes. And so that was one of the reasons why we joined up with Women in HVACR. And then I just was selected to be on the board the beginning of this year. And so really Women in HVACR is such a great organization. I know we were talking before and you said you came to one of our events, like our regional events are awesome. So many people come, everyone's invited, and we have tons of members, and it's really an opportunity for women to connect and network and get education and learn about opportunities in the trades.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I've seen people as they've joined Women in HVACR, and then I've watched them kind of grow in their professional life because of the other women that they're surrounded by. And, there's some big hitters in the Women of HVACR. I mean, there's the top names, from all over the industry. And I think that's a really, really awesome organization.
Yeah, it's super fun, and it's amazing. A lot of people think that when you come into the industry, you have to be a technician, right? And you're definitely seeing a lot more female technicians and sales representatives, comfort consultants than you did before, but still it's like 2%. Oh yeah. Like there's not very many still, but there's more opportunities in that, and people just don't think about it. From manufacturing and engineering, you've got, educational platforms, you've got so many different sales or marketing. There's positions all over the place.
Absolutely. Yeah. The training aspect alone, there's a lot of guys. So we do some training and stuff, and my guys, they tell me that I'm too boring. Like it's too monotonous. Like they don't want to listen to me talk, but they're just fine listening to Julie or someone else talk, one of the ladies talk. And so I feel like that's extremely helpful, to have someone else being able to teach and do the training aspect of it as well.
It's one of those things. One of my coworkers is so funny. He's like, imagine all day you're getting hounded by like your dispatchers and CSRs and then your daughter and your wife. And he's like, if you just have a female trainer or a coach that's just super nice, it's like you finally have somebody that's like building you up. And so it was kind of funny when he did that.
Yeah, that is funny. So let's dive down into a little bit about today's topic and just talking about CSRs and dispatchers in general. At what point do you think that, or do you feel like a company should have a CSR, bring a CSR on? Or actually, before we get there, in your words, can you tell me the difference in a CSR and a dispatcher?
Yeah. So, a lot of companies combine the role just because they don't have or are not ready to hire enough people. But definitely as companies grow larger, they have a specific department that's for dispatchers and then a certain department that's for CSRs. And so CSRs are mainly the ones that are going to be answering all the inbound phone calls. Hopefully they're the ones that are also doing the happy calls and maybe, scheduling all the maintenance customers. Sometimes you're going to see dispatchers do scheduling maintenance customers, but mostly the dispatchers are playing Tetris with the technicians and making sure that, everybody is going where they need to go and that it fits geographically. And the dispatchers are also the ones that communicate with the technicians the most. Like, hey, I need you to go here. I need you to run this call. And everyone's different with how they run their company. One thing we have seen for sure that, and you will probably have some light to this, some dispatchers will give technicians all their calls for the day. Like They'll give 5 calls a day. And so the technician knows exactly what he's going to do. So he's going to rush through his calls. He's going to be done by 2 and he's going to go home.
Right.
Well, then your dispatcher calls and says, hey, I got an emergency call. Can you run it? And he's like, I already did my 5 calls for the day. I'm going home.
Exactly.
And so it makes it so much harder for them to want to go do an extra call. And then they don't spend the time with their customer that they should have, providing different options and, just having conversations with them about an IQ product or a service agreement. It's just like, and, going back to the I'm Justa too, like technicians will say Justa a lot too. They're like, oh, it's just a capacitor. Oh, it's just a motor. Well, if it's just a part, why do I need you? Let me go buy the part. I'll make my husband watch a YouTube video and he can do it. Like,
exactly.
So you're not just a parts changer, because if that's what you are, then, I don't need to pay you all the money that you're charging me. But
yeah,
if you're
you turn that commodity that you definitely take your value out of it whenever you have that. And it's a lot of what that we've been talking about in a couple of previous episodes. And it's just commoditizing, you like taking your value and what your knowledge is. Whenever you say that it's just this part, like exactly like you said, then I'll just YouTube it and we'll go about our day and I'll buy the $7 part off of Amazon versus paying you a couple $100.
Exactly. And that it's taking that language out of everybody's vocabulary because it's not part of that overall customer experience. And I don't remember what episode this might have been, but the difference between a technician and a service professional or a service expert.
Yes.
A technician is like the bad image of the industry. Mm-hmm. When we did this survey earlier this year, we asked 100 different homeowners across the country what they thought of an HVAC contractor. And they responded, 50% of the responses were like, oh, their AC or furnace repair. And then 50 of the other responses were completely random, like crappy, dirty, take advantage of you. They're a ripoff. They're too expensive. Never call them. Do it yourself. Like half of homeowners really have a negative perception of the industry. And so that's what a technician does. A technician shows up with a cigarette in his mouth and there's paint or something, mastic all over his pants and holes in a hoodie he hasn't washed for 3 weeks. And that's what people think of a technician. But then you have your service professionals who show up and, wear their shoe covers, roll out the red carpet, put a Tic Tac in. And
yeah. And then people are like, wow, this is not what I expected at all. And it's crazy when you get that 5-star review where it's like, this is not the experience that I expected, but it's the experience that I definitely wanted to have. And then you're like, yeah, that's how we do everything. And then all of a sudden people are blowing up your phone because that's the reviews that you're getting every single time. You're consistently getting those 5-star reviews with that kind of response.
Absolutely. And I hate to say that people judge us by how we look, but they do. Like,
Absolutely.
we should never judge homeowners by their house or their last name or anything, because you never know what kind of wads of money they've got stashed around, right?
Absolutely.
But we can't expect our homeowners to do that the same for us. Like, we really do have to show up. Perception is reality. And we do have to show up looking that professional part. So, like, for example, I live in an HOA. I hate the HOAs, but it is what it is. We have an HOA group. And guess what people ask for on the group all the time? Hey, who do you guys recommend for a plumber? Who do you recommend for a technician or an electrician?
Yeah.
Like, we're talking all the time. And I want to have somebody that I can say, hey, you know what? Tertia's my guy. Like, you got to call that guy. And people talk, like you said, those reviews, those experiences matter.
They really do. And it's crazy because we have a real estate affiliate partner of ours that her and her husband are a real estate team, and they're great people. And but every time somebody asks a question, she's so fast to just quickly recommend us and say, hey, look, the experience is going to be, you're just not going to have an experience the same with anyone else. And she sells something like 200 houses a year. And she said, I've gone through a ton of HVAC companies. I've gone through all the big companies in town. And there's nobody that provides the experience like this. And when she says that, then people are like, oh yeah, okay, we'll give you a try. And so like we get a ton of business from just blowing her socks off.
And I love what you're saying, the experience. It's not like, oh, these are the cheapest guys, or these are the guys that do it the fastest. It's like, you know, these are the guys that are going to show up, that are going to stand behind their work. These are the guys that are not going to trash your house. They'll like wipe everything down. You know, they'll be respectful. And, you know, you can be 5 stars on fixing something. Technicians are great at fixing stuff. Like, you're world class. All day long, you love working with your hands, world class on that. But, you know, if I could give you 5 stars on changing out a part, awesome. But I want to give you 5 stars on cleanliness. I want to give you 5 stars on appearance. I want to give you 5 stars on, you know, your conversation with me, your empathy skills. I want to give you 5 stars on all these other little KPIs, right?
Yeah. And the thing about it is I hate to interrupt. Sorry for interrupting you there. Okay. I'm excited about this because the 5-star experience, or the experience package, it actually starts as soon as the CSR picks up the phone. And I know that Power Selling Pros is very, very much like, this is something that y'all teach a lot. And, you know, that experience, the showing the empathy and knowing the difference between empathy and sympathy, like just coming on and saying, you know, feeling for the customer, like, not I'm in the same shoes as you are, but, you know, I understand where you're going through, and let's work through this together. And we want to make sure that we solve this issue together with you. But you know, if they have a super crappy, like somebody picks up the phone and like, what do you want? And then you're an inconvenience to them. Yeah. And it's like, sorry for calling. Like, I just need service. Like, sorry for stopping you from playing Words with Friends or whatever you're doing, you know? And it's like, picking up that phone, like that 5-star experience really starts at the beginning. And I'll tell you this, Julie, before we hired a CSR full-time, and Julie was rocking that position, she was getting 5-star reviews from people that didn't even use us. Like, it was like, oh, we don't offer that service, but this is where you can go. And so she would go through that, you know, these people will take care of you, blah, blah, blah. And even going as far as calling those people and just, you know, having a conversation with them. Hey, somebody's looking for this service. And, they've given 5-star reviews for that. And it's crazy how much of an experience, like, we will listen to people, and even like we've had after hour services, and Julie will listen to, or Julie and I together will listen to a phone call where they've picked up the phone, and together we're like, I wouldn't buy anything from us if that's how somebody talked to me. And so that CSR is the first line of defense when it comes to getting a bad review. So you have to make sure that that's the most important position in the business. They're your front line defense.
They really are. And when you think about how much money you pay to get your phone to ring,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
$350 a phone call. And I've got like thousands of calls right now I could play for you where somebody calls and says, hey, how much do you charge to come out? Oh, it's $89 for us to send a technician out there. $89? Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. Bye. Click. And it's like, if people think that price shoppers are not leads, like they'll call us back if they need us. No, hope is not a business strategy, right? You can't hope they'll call you back because you're the cheapest company. You don't want to be the cheapest company.
Exactly.
So the couple of things here with the after hour service, I know that's a big problem in the industry. People are always looking for a good after hour service because if you have great CSRs and then a crappy after hour service, it's really hard. So that's definitely something that, to be very conscious of who's answering your after service.
Yeah, and to mystery shop the after hour service too. Like the other day I was like, I don't think this phone number even goes to anything. We have a lot of marketing phone numbers or whatever. And I was like, I don't recognize that phone number. So I clicked on it just to listen to it. And I sat on hold for like, I don't know, 5 minutes with it just ringing and saying, we'll get to you. We're going to get to you. And then they picked up and I was like, what in the world? Like they were nice once they picked up, but to wait that long, like I was super irritated that was the case. And it's the lesser of all of the evils. I feel like right now, nobody really kills it in the industry as an after hour service, in my opinion, or so we've experienced. So it's definitely a tough one. It is a tough one. In our group, in our AIM group, our small mastermind group, we have even talked about like, let's get together and hire an after hours service together or create a small after hours service going overseas. And so it's during the daytime for them and here it's at night. And, we just use them together. And even like just coming up with something like that so that they're answering the phones the way we want them to answer the phones and going through the processes the proper way. But we haven't pulled the trigger with that. But it's something that I know a lot of people talk about constantly.
It really is. And, I probably shouldn't say this, but Power Selling Pros is working on something like that. So
well, sweet.
Stay tuned, but it's in the works because definitely creating an after hours call center is a big deal. But as Disney always says, like there's a method to their magic.
Yes.
And they're very intentional about how they create the Disney experience. And it's the same thing at Power Selling Pros with our process of call handling. We're very intentional of how we train CSRs and training them on the process and the principles and do's and don'ts, especially, but how do we become the kind of person that can pick up that phone that gets what it means to listen? Like scripts are great, but I use the term script really loosely. Like yes. I want you to be the kind of person who can listen to a customer and ask good questions. I want you to be the kind of person that's empathetic. And I definitely help like with starter things, like here's what you say and don't say, like,
right.
Never say you're sorry is one. Like customers never believe you. Oh, I'm so sorry your water heater's out. I'm so sorry your toilet's clogged. It's like, are you though? Are you really? And another thing that people are is they're very indifferent. They're very apathetic, meaning somebody says, hey, my toilet's clogged or I don't have any heat or AC. And they're like, okay, what's your address? Have you ever used our services? It's like you completely bypass all of the pain that they're trying to tell you. So sympathy is like, oh, I'm sorry about that. Or, I understand what you're going through. That happened to my cousin's brother's uncle's aunt one time too. And it was really bad. Like we never understand what's going on for a customer. So taking out, I'm sorry, taking out, I understand. The last thing we should never say is at least. Like, well, at least it didn't go out on the hottest day of the year. Or, well, at least you still have water. Like,
at least the AC works at my house.
I know. It's so condescending. And so those would be my top 3 to like never say to customers to be empathetic is I'm sorry, I understand. And at least because it's apathetic and it's sympathetic and you really want to work on empathy. So as you mentioned, like what is empathy? It's feeling with people and, validating them. Oh my gosh, like that sounds so frustrating. Or, well, it looks like this happened at the most inconvenient time. Or, you got a lot on your plate. This can only be overwhelming for you. Like connecting with people of like the emotional state that they're in instead of apologizing for it.
Yeah, and it's funny because Julie on live here, Julie said, connect with them first, and it's so true. Connect with them, that emotional state, and it's like the problem that I have is I have an extremely dry sense of humor, and I'm very condescending without being condescending. Like I say those same things that you just said, and they're like, are you being a jackass? Like, are you being a jerk right now? And I'm like, no, not at all. And it's like, you just have to be very careful about the way that your conversation is being perceived to them. And that's going to be the biggest thing.
Yeah, absolutely. How it's perceived, like perception is reality. And when I talk with customers and when I answer phones, I try to be very intentional about, if I say this, could they misinterpret how I'm saying this? And if I find a way that they could misinterpret what I say, I don't say it. And I try to, reword it. And so, the most common one is we don't give pricing over the phone. Mm-hmm. Well, that may be true, sure. But your customer is going to misinterpret that as you can't help me then. Mm-hmm. I'm going to hang up on you. The reality is you absolutely can help them. All your technicians or your service professionals, your experts, they have the pricing, but just the fact that you're like, we don't have pricing in the office, unfortunately, they don't give that to me. Once again, you're belittling yourself and make it sound like you don't know what's going on in that building, which you do. And second off, like, you have to be more proactive in helping them. And so, really paying attention to the language of, how could they misinterpret this really helps us be more proactive.
Yeah, I do love hearing it. Someone who's good at talking, having that conversation with someone and saying, getting the job booked for one, and then having the entire conversation without giving out prices. And it's like, because me, I'm a sucker. Like you asked me about 3 or 4 times what the price is, I'm going to give you the price or some version of it. And so it's like, to listen to someone who can have that conversation and they're like, they're dead set. They're not giving the price out, and they're not giving out the diagnostic fee or the consultation fee until you've already built the value. And then once the value is built, and then they're like, oh, it's only $89. Like, that seems kind of low. And then you have that, that's the conversation versus, okay, it's $89. Thanks. I'll call you back. And so it's really cool listening to people who can have that conversation. And it's, you honestly, in my opinion, is getting out of your own head, is getting out of your own headspace whenever it comes to that conversation. Because, well, that's not the way we've done it in the past. That's not how it works in our industry. And that's what I loved about Julie coming in, because she's a nurse and she came into our business not knowing the industry. And so, like, when she said stuff, she was like, this is the answer. Like when she was coached and taught how to do any kind of CSR dispatching type stuff, I would say, well, that's not going to work. That's not what's always been done in the industry. And she said, well, this is the way I was trained. And so I was like, well, then do it. And then so she would do it and it worked. And I'm like, how did that work? Like, that's so crazy. And then it just keep doing it. If it's working, keep doing it, and it's so wild that we just can't get out of our own way and in our own headspace there.
It's so true. And you see this a lot because the industry is a big industry, but it's also small. Like, everybody kind of knows each other. We connect all the time. We love talking with other contractors. And so we kind of follow what other people have always done. But one of the things is like, I'm a millennial. I think you're a millennial too, right? Yep. And you got 45% of your homeowners that are millennials right now.
Yep.
And we expect something different. We expect solutions, and we expect you to figure it out, and this is me, like, anytime I have to call in for something, right? It's a problem with my credit card or my cell phone bill or whatever it is. Like, I expect who I call to figure it out and take care of me and not just leave me hanging dry. And so I love what Julie's like, this is how we do it. And being able to bring that new perspective in is so important, instead of getting stuck in the rut of, not that how it was done before was bad. It's just, we have to change with.
Oh yeah. I agree 100%. Like and I would almost argue that it is bad, like the way that it was done, just because that's how we've always done it. Like, that's one of my pet peeves with my guys is like, well, that's just how we've always done it. And I'm like, you're about to get smacked. Like, I don't care if that's how we've always done this. It's not the right way to do it. So we're going to do it this way. And sometimes you try a new way and it doesn't work. And then it's like, okay, well, the other way worked better. But at least you could say you've made an attempt to do it. But with this, I would say that having that conversation and doing it the Power Selling Pros way, like it's having that conversation that way, is very much the right way to do it now. I definitely feel like there's has been a transition in our industry, and I challenge people to check out Power Selling Pros and see how they do things. And if somebody does want to get connected with Power Selling Pros, how is it that we do that?
Yeah, well, if you guys want to just contact me, I mean, just email me. It's totally fine. You can even text me. I'm a millennial. Send me an emoji. Like, I don't care. And I could put all my information in the chat, and I don't know if you post that anywhere.
Yeah.
But,
I'll post it.
Just contact me. I'd love to talk to you about our CSR training programs, our dispatch training programs, our service professional training programs. We really go into the soft skills and setting up that process and that foundation to, what are the opportunities to be empathetic to people? What are the opportunities to build value? And going back to some of these pricing calls, how you said, like, you love to hear how people are able to never give a price, but do it in a nice way. Like, we have the 4-step process to overcoming pricing objections. And if a customer does this, you take them here. It's like a roadmap kind of thing. And, really help people be able to deliver that experience without having to use any of the negative language and providing solutions for them. And so, we also have a great leadership program, and, using our same curriculum, using the same pattern, because they're principles. And if we can upgrade our principles and how we do things and how we talk to people, like, we're going to get better. And when we get better, people around us get better, and then business gets better and it gets easier. So
yes, that's the end goal. We want it to be easier. Where's my easy button now?
I know.
Cool deal. Thank you, Erica, for coming on the show and sharing everything with us and taking the time out of your day to share a little bit more information with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's so much fun. And yeah, let me know anything I can do to help you guys. I'm so passionate about this stuff. So, and I love the industry. So it's a great
Absolutely. And I'll put all of your information in the show notes and in the live chat on Facebook.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You have a wonderful day. And everyone who's listening or watching live here on Facebook or YouTube, however you're watching this, thank you again for watching or listening to the Service Business Mastery Podcast. It's a podcast focused on service business owners, managers, and technicians who are considering becoming business owners themselves. I hope today's episode helped answer some of those unasked questions that you may have had. And if you have more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Erica. And like I said, I'll put her information in the show notes and in the live chat stream. But with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Service Business Mastery. Now that you are equipped with essential business advice from this impactful conversation, you are one step closer to becoming the successful owner of your dreams. If this episode has been helpful to your business journey, don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and share it with other owners as well. Visit servicebusinessmastery.com to learn more.